Ukrainians who previously discovered secret underground passages of Russians decided to go down them and see what's inside. At the same time, 1.2 terabytes of Shoigu's data was hijacked. And this is pretty ridiculous, you will see what I mean. And finally, at least a couple of humongous Russian factories spontaneously was caught on fire. But more about all of this in just a couple of minutes. What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. And let's get straight to the point and talk about some ridiculous Russian propaganda. Whoa. We spoke briefly about Minister of Defense of Russia, Sergei Shoigu, and today he is in the center of our attention. So, he was shown one of the most recent so-called, let's call them modifications of one of Russian metallic cylinders, Ha-59, and the guy said that they decided to increase the weight of the warhead all the way from 450 kilograms to 800. And Shoigu was like, good, хорошо, probably not even understanding what the warhead means. But here is the catch. The total weight, the total payload, let's call it like this, of the entire Ha-59 metallic cylinder, obviously, it is only estimated to be at 790 kilograms or less. So making a warhead, only warhead itself, 800 kilograms, will kinda do some conflicts with the pure physics. But what do I know? I'm not an engineer. And there is more ridiculous stuff to talk about Shoigu in today's episode, so please stay tuned. Or actually, you know what? It's not that much, so let's talk about this right now, right away. And so yes, speaking about Shoigu once again, which is now kinda a combination of serious and ridiculous stuff, you'll see what I mean soon. So recently, Ukrainian hackers reportedly were able to steal 1.2 terabytes of data from the Russian Ministry of Defense. And this included extremely detailed plans to more than 500 military objects of Russia, including the ones which are extremely classified and extremely secret ones. Then they were also able to lock hundreds of Russian Ministry of Defense personal computers, and then they also locked, let's call it like this, I'm not an IT guy, so I'm just doing a literal translation here, but they locked 7 entire servers, which made the data inaccessible and all the backup files also pretty much useless. And now I'm pretty curious what is the percentage of this data which was, let's call it like this, useful, because judging by the knowledge, or I would even say unawareness of Sergei Shoigu of some simple military related things, such as for example this weight of the most common metallic cylinder, to be honest, the probability that this data was not correct, it's pretty high. And I mean, speaking about Shoigu, he's not like just some kind of a regular soldier. And by the way, he even never served in the Russian army. But that's another thing. He is the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation. So not knowing the weight load of its main metallic cylinder, it's pretty ridiculous to say the least. And as a result of this, I do personally think that maybe a pretty big percentage of this leaked data will be either unusable, irrelevant, or maybe just simply wrong. And yes, by the way, guys, speaking about percentages, do you know what I noticed recently? 44.9% of you are watching this video and are not subscribed, and this is equally unacceptable as the position of Shoigu in his role as the Minister of Defense of Russia. And since we are getting here very close to 240,000, it is now time for all of us guys to unite and push this goal together. We will need every single one of you guys, and yes, it also includes you, Carlos, and you as well, Robert, and even Kevin, Michael, and of course Dwight. Every single one of you guys need to subscribe right now. You can also follow me on Instagram, some very interesting stories are already posted, the link is down below. And so yes, now finally let's get serious. First of all, talk about a couple of humongous Russian factories being spontaneously catching on fires. Then I'm gonna give you an extremely quick update from the south and the east of Ukraine, and finally we'll talk about secret underground Russian tunnels. And so yes, to begin with, right here is the video from Rostov, where one of the biggest Russian chemical plants self-ignited, as the Russian propaganda mentioned in the state TV channels. And yes, this was one of the biggest contractors of the Russian military, so nothing extraordinary here. Next we go to Bryansk, where an oil depot also somehow self-ignited. Probably somebody was just smoking in inappropriate place. Maybe a Russian soldier. Next, we already got pretty close to the border with Ukraine. Is already notorious Belgorod, where a local electrical power station also short-circuited or something like this, but the result is that a couple of neighborhoods were left without electricity. But most importantly, another, one of the biggest and according to some sources pretty much the only gunpowder producing factory on the territory of Russia, also suffered a significant unsustainable damages. As you can see from this video, the consequences are truly devastating, which will inevitably create a short supply of the Russian army munition. The defense intelligence of Ukraine confirmed that these attacks they did take place, and it is a pretty interesting coincidence that such important military-related targets self-destructed in such a short period of time. And so yes, now as promised, let's briefly talk about the situation in the south of Ukraine. There are at least two very important news, and then we'll go to the east and we'll finalize everything with the mysterious tunnels. And first of all, right here is the confirmed picture of the Russian Black Sea Fleet ship called Tarantul, allegedly the patrol ship, which reportedly was sunk by the Ukrainian forces not that long time ago. Then we go to Zaporozhye frontline, and right here is the video from Verbove, where a Russian armored personnel carrier BMP-3 was destroyed by Ukrainians along with its crew. And then, reportedly, south to Robotny, another armored personnel carrier was destroyed by Ukrainians. Our next stop brings us to Kherson region, where a Russian self-propelled artillery system Sta-S has been annihilated by Ukrainians. And then another multiple launch rocket system called Grad was also destroyed by Ukrainians, as you can see from this video. And as you can see in my current episodes, I start to use more and more footage, which unfortunately is not allowed on YouTube due to guidelines. But as always, all the fully uncensored episodes of the Russian Dude, along with extra hundreds of footage which I upload there weekly, will be available on my Patreon. There is 1 week of free access for every single one of you, and the link is down below. And as you can see, majority of Russian military targets were destroyed thanks to Ukrainian drones, which once again confirms the fact that modern warfare is mainly done with these small flying machines. And even they, drones themselves, they can intercept each other. So as you can see from this video. Our next stop brings us to Novokakhovka, where Ukrainians reportedly were able to destroy an electronic warfare system of Russians. And then, along these islands, along the Dnipro river, a Russian assault group, which was led by an allegedly known Russian soldier with the nickname Moises, they were destroyed inside this house, also looks like by a Ukrainian drone. This action took in a very close proximity to Krynki, where there is still an existing bridgehead of Ukrainians, and at this point Russians looks like they will never be able to push them back anymore. And just unfortunately, speaking about Krynki itself, right here as you can see the picture which shows the current condition of this settlement. And just in general, speaking about the assaults of Russians against Ukrainian positions on the left side of Kherson region across Dnipro river, in the last 24 hours there were at least 11 attempts of Russians to push them back, and all of them were extremely unsuccessful. And now let's switch our attention to the east of Ukraine, where I'm gonna give you even quicker update about the situation in that region, before we can talk about secret tunnels of Russians. But before this, let me just give you a quick shout out to Private Internet Access VPN. This is an extremely good VPN service where I'm using every single time I'm traveling, every single time I want to watch my favorite hockey games somewhere outside of Canada, and all of this is really simply restricted because of geo restrictions. I just use PIA VPN, change my location to Canada, and I can always see my NHL games no matter where I am. This is just one of the benefits of a VPN service, and for viewers of this channel, for you guys, they give an extremely good promotion. Please go ahead and check the link down below in the pinned comment in the description, and this is a very best way to support the channel. So thank you so much, PIA VPN. And so yes, as we go to the east, believe it or not, there is even more videos of the drone activities. And right here is allegedly from one of Crimea forests, where a Ukrainian drone operator did an ambush with a drone against a Russian tank. It flew right under the turret, the weakest spot of any tank, and the rest you can guess. As we go down to Bakhmut, right here is even more drone compilation footage from Bakhmut, and as you can see, Ukrainians were able to eliminate several Russian trench positions without even approaching them by foot. Everything was done fully remotely. And yes, all of this, once again, videos I'm showing here, full versions and uncensored ones, as always on my Patreon as well, link down below. Next we go even more down, this time to Avdiivka, where once again Ukrainians are using again the very same flying machines to attack the positions of Russians. And then, speaking about the very same settlement, Russians for some reason decided to store their munition and weapons inside one of the abandoned tanks, and Ukrainians were able to discover it because it is literally in the open field. Then they targeted this tank, and there was a very big ball of fire, destroying pretty much this temporarily ammunition warehouse. Next we go to Stepovia, located to the northwest of Avdiivka, and here is one more footage of a Ukrainian Bradley infantry fighting vehicle obliterating the positions of Russians. And then all the way to the south, to Marinka, we have right here this road which is connecting Marinka and Novomikhailivka. And if you remember, Novomikhailivka is pretty much the next settlement which Russians are laying their eyes upon. So they try to approach this city from pretty much all directions, from the south, east and the north, and then they also sometimes send vehicles back and forth. And there is this so-called Road of Death, where a lot of abandoned and destroyed Russian military vehicles forever took place, becoming immovable objects. And if it is relatively complicated for you to find every single vehicle, which is quite understandable, right here is the deep state map, which shows the points, icons, where these so-called military vehicles were found. So as you can see, the number of them is pretty high. But this was not the only success by Ukrainians recently. What else they did is that they were able to discover these secret mystery underground passages and tunnels that Russians were building, looks like, for a very long time, potentially weeks, months, or maybe even years. This is some kind of even the entire underground network which connects multiple cities. Russians do not even need to leave them. There are even barracks, rooms, you can literally live underground. There is electricity, there is connective roads, stores, everything you can find is located underground. And if you remember, we were already talking about this extensive network of underground passages in a couple of my previous videos, and it was even estimated that the total length exceeds maybe even more than 6,000 kilometers. And looks like finally, in one of the most recent attacks of Ukrainians, they were able to push Russians back, and they found one of the entrances to these secret tunnels. And as you can see from the video, once again, they are extremely extensive, well developed. This is the entire underground city network. And so right here is potentially the most interesting part. So, since these underground passages, they do connect several major and sometimes small cities, what if now Ukrainians will be able to use them to their advantage? What if Ukrainians will be able to appear out of nowhere behind Russian front lines and change the situation on some of the front lines in their favor? And this will be potentially a pretty big distinguishing, pretty big factor in where the war is gonna go in the near future. So let's see, I'll be closely following this situation, and if something appears, I will make sure to make a video about it. And for you guys, if you once again don't want to miss it, just please consider subscribing to my channel. Only takes one small little click. Thank you so much once again, Private Internet Access, VPN and my Patreons, for your support, and see you on Tuesday.